I see our role here in Israel as being very specific around helping entrepreneurs parlay their successes here into global activity. So we know that one of the things that Israel does uniquely well is identify great technologies, but then also understand that the market is elsewhere and help bridge over to that.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumi Tech, sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Turing, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and in media partnership with C-Tech. Today we're going to meet someone who is deeply influential in the Israeli ecosystem, working with a lot of startups, especially in their early stages. Meet Yonit Serkin, Managing Director of MassChallenge Israel. Yonit has spent her career supporting innovators and connecting networks first in the public sector as a member of Mayor Michael Bloomberg's economic development team, and then as an investor and executive. Today, she's the managing director of MassChallenge Israel, helping startup founders and other stakeholders build groundbreaking solutions. Yonit Golub Serkin, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders, MassChallenge Israel. How are you doing?
That's right. It's good to see you. It's good to be here, Michael. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming to the show. We have a lot to cover, a lot to cover. So I'm going to get right in there. MassChallenge Israel. MassChallenge is one of the biggest organizations in the world when it comes to the association of startups and early stage startups and accelerators. And today we're going to be focusing on this concept, but also thinking more critically about the Israeli ecosystem and where it's headed and what we're seeing. So Yonit, tell me in a few words your entrance to MassChallenge, because you were also in venture capital before and you've done quite a few things other than that.
Absolutely. So I have this unique way that I got involved in the tech ecosystem at all. After I finished graduate school, actually, while I was in university, I worked on a political campaign, and it was Mike Bloomberg for mayor. He was running for mayor for the very first time in 2001. I had just finished my freshman year of university at Johns Hopkins, and I got into it for all the wrong reasons. It seemed like it'd be fun. I wanted to be in New York. Seemed like a good way to spend my summer. It wasn't a really very well thought out process. But once I started working on the campaign, I just met incredible people. I met some of the smartest, most driven people that I've ever met still. And I sort of fell in love with this candidate, this person who just believed that he could make changes in the largest city, one of the most complicated cities in the country, in the US. And so I stayed in touch with the campaign and with the administration once I went back to the university. And after I finished graduate school, I joined his team on the economic development team. So I first started as a spokeswoman for the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and ultimately joined the City Hall staff, and finally was the Deputy Chief of Staff for Economic Development. I give that long background because that's actually the point at which I met tech and VCs at all. My background had been sort of public service. I had a degree in finance and in international relations, but I hadn't worked with VCs or with venture beforehand. And following the 2007-2008 financial recession, we in the city understood that we need to help what were then small businesses or startups grow so that they would establish the new job creation base in the city of New York. And for me, as a young person on the economic development team, part of my role was to get to know startups, to get to know founders, to get to know investors, and see what it is that they need in order to better grow, better connect. And I just really was enthused and excited by people who come together, who see intractable problems and think that they can actually solve them. Like, that audacity is just fascinating to me. And so when I moved to Israel in 2010, I knew that this was the place that I wanted to be. I had the fortune to join to help found a fund that was looking at investing in Israeli companies that were going to be doing business throughout the broader Middle East. A fund called Amelia, then moved over to Moonscape, where I was doing corporate investing. And there, so much of my work was around helping our portfolio navigate within the corporates that we were supporting. So, we had on the one hand, large companies that are interested in technology and want to work with startups, but they work at a different pace. They have a different language. They have different KPIs than the startups with whom they're looking to work. And I found myself at this sort of intersection, helping navigate between these two worlds. And it was then in late 2015, early 16, that I was approached by John Harthorne, who's the founder of MassChallenge, who said, look, we're coming to Israel. And this is where we sit, right? We sit at the place where we help entrepreneurs and founders get to their next step by connecting with an ecosystem of stakeholders. And those include corporates and academia and government and investors, of course, and the like. And for me, this just felt like the natural next step, having sat in a few of those seats around the stakeholder table, to actually now be able to be on the side to support entrepreneurs and give them the toolkit that they need in order to grow. So I joined the MassChallenge team as we were being founded here in Israel. And then I've had the great fortune to lead the team now for the last 3 years. And what we do is work with entrepreneurs and with innovators in other spaces. We don't believe that it's only founders who can bring about really incredible innovation and new technologies. But we work with founders in order to help them grow their businesses, get to new markets, create jobs, and build strong, sustainable startups. And so we've been able to do that out of Jerusalem now for the last 6 years. We're now in the midst of our 6th cohort. And it's an exciting job, one of the best jobs in the world. Every day you get to work with new companies and see founders who are taking on some pretty miraculous solutions to make our world better.
Incredible. So I actually visited the MassChallenge offices in Mexico about a year ago, I guess, and it was phenomenal, and it was inspiring to see what's happening there. In a few words, what is the responsibility that you see for yourself or for MassChallenge within the Israeli ecosystem? You touched on that a little bit, but what role really do you play within all this crazy stuff that's happening here?
Yeah, the Israeli ecosystem is so unique. And you mentioned our colleagues in Mexico. We have offices in 7 different cities around the world, and each one of them is sort of finds itself within a different mix and within a different sophistication of the ecosystem and growth of it. I see our role here in Israel as being very specific around helping entrepreneurs parlay their successes here into global activity. So we know that one of the things that Israel does uniquely well is identify great technologies, but then also understand that the market is elsewhere and help bridge over to that. Because MassChallenge has this pretty incredible network around the world, I think we're uniquely positioned to help entrepreneurs do that thoughtfully by connecting with the types of either customers or stakeholders that they need to work with in order to ultimately grow their businesses to other markets. I will say that we also, I think, have uniquely been in a place here in Israel where we invite entrepreneurs from all over the world to join us here. So the MassChallenge Israel program is not only Israeli. In fact, about a third of the startups that we're working with come from outside of Israel. They come to Israel or through Israel in order to connect with the local ecosystem, and then they'll grow to other places. And that's a pretty unique place where we actually get to introduce foreign entrepreneurs or foreign founders to the incredibly deep, strong local ecosystem, and one, frankly, that's very, very engaged and volunteerism, meaning that we see so many CEOs, heads of funds, people in really meaningful positions who volunteer their time to work with early stage entrepreneurs. It's something that I think as Israelis, we sort of assume is part of the culture everywhere, but it really isn't. And it's an important note to make, that one of the engines, or one of the things that are keeping this engine going, really is the spirit of volunteerism and willingness to support one another.
Incredible. And so as you're watching a lot of these founders grow and a lot of these entrepreneurs and the ecosystem develop over the last few years, and we're seeing the ecosystem develop in quite significant ways, what are some places where you pinpoint some important notes where you feel like these are the important things to be able to work on with these startup founders that perhaps they're not perhaps cognizant of as they're going about their journey?
Well, it's very funny. We do meetings with each one of the startups that get accepted to the program, and it's almost 50, so it's a lot of meetings before they start, in order to try to set up what their KPIs are, what are they thinking about. And our first meetings almost exclusively talk about fundraising, right? Everyone is sure, if I just find that check, I'm ready to go, and I know exactly how to build a company. I know exactly how I'm going to market. I am ready to go tomorrow. There's just this one little thing missing. And then when you actually sit with founders and you take that apart, you sort of unpack what that is and say, well, how can we actually build not just a product or a technology, but a sustainable business, right? We're not building a rocket ship, sending it off and then going back to our daily lives. The idea here is to build a real solution that's going to take us from point A to point B. And that requires advisors. It means building a team. It means building a product offering. It means understanding our customers in a really deep sense. And those are all things that we help support them on. And one of the things that we have seen over the course of the last several years, but particularly I think this is exacerbated or quickened by the corona virus and sort of the lockdowns around that, as well as the conversation that's happening in many countries in the West about diversity, about inclusion, about access and opportunity, is that in order to build strong, sustainable companies, strong companies for the long term, we need to start helping our founders understand what that means in terms of team makeup, in terms of access to customers. And we need to understand that now, even when it seems sort of very far away, we need to start getting that conversation happening today, because that's going to ultimately help them grow into more attractive, sustainable businesses for the future. We know that in the U.S. there are many funds that will only work with startups that have ESG goals. We know that the public markets are expecting companies when they get to that stage to have matrices around and real measurement around those goals. And that's the sort of thing that's really hard to sort of add on afterwards. But if you've got it built into the recipe and built into the business from day one, then you're really well prepared and well positioned for that sort of growth. And that's the sort of thing that we want to introduce to startups through the program, where we're actually bringing sort of global best practices to Israel and then Israeli best practices to the world. And it's a really wonderful conversation that happens between those two to ultimately help these startups just get big, significant, and do more quickly.
And so how does that tangibly happen in the end? Because, these are not trivial things to understand or to strategically work through as a startup positions itself to grow. So how does MassChallenge sort of interjects itself within the startup life cycle and help think critically through these ESG goals or this type of growth?
So MassChallenge really does take a community-based approach to everything that we do. We work at scale. That means at any given point, we're accelerating 40, 50 companies. That's a lot. It's more than any other accelerator in the country does at any given point. And what that means, or what that requires in order to actually facilitate, is a real community approach. So we work with volunteer mentors and experts, not only from Israel, but from around the world, who come together on a weekly basis to work with the startups. This isn't a one-time, we'll chat and then I'll leave, but rather work over the extended period of time in order to help support the startups so that they can develop those goals, those criteria, and think critically about the way their companies are ultimately going to grow and go to market. We also work with the startups. We bring 10 startups every year to the US, where we're actually building out a curated roadshow for them. And the idea here is that we can actually be that supporting network to identify the types of folks who can help them get to that next milestone and do so in a way that's really responsible and sustainable.
Right. And so tell me about your passion within MassChallenge and the impact that you're personally experiencing. One of the things that I enjoy most in this show is also understanding the motivations behind people and why they do what they do. So Yonit, why do you do what you do? You're venture capital, Bloomberg, you can really do anything you want right now. Why MassChallenge Israel?
I think that MassChallenge Israel is a unique sort of platform for me. First of all, to get to know incredible people who are building just incredible companies. And there is no day that I'm in the office and I'm bored, because I will meet with one company in the morning that's looking to solve challenges around accessibility to healthcare, or making the IVF process more simple or more equitable. And then I'll meet in the afternoon with a company that's creating cyber solutions for some of the most critical infrastructure needs that we have, and another one that's figuring out a better way for for students to be educated in early grades so that they can better capture math information. I mean, there are very few jobs in life that allow you to get to play or to be on so many different journeys at the same time. And that's I feel incredibly lucky to be able to do that. And I get to do that with a team of super driven, super ambitious people who are just looking to support innovation and are doing that not only here in Israel, but also around the world. So for me, this is really just a wonderful way to bring all these forces together. And I get to talk to people who care about innovation and building great companies. And that's fun too.
So looking from a bird's eye view, and you're watching a lot of these entrepreneurs go about their journey, and you're witnessing both successes and a lot of failures naturally within the industry. What are some common patterns that you may be seeing from early stage entrepreneurs that you can already say, I'm saying this, I've seen this play out 1,000 times before. I don't think this is quite what you want to be doing.
Well, first of all, I think that one of the best markers for startups is really the passion of the entrepreneur. I think being able to answer the question, why me, why now, is just critical. And the founders who are able to do that in a really succinct and exacting way, I think are in a unique position to really be able to get traction and to be able to raise capital. I think the other place that we see some founders really shine has to do with sort of humility. I've gotten the chance now to work with well over 300 entrepreneurs through just MassChallenge itself.
Incredible.
And the entrepreneurs who come in and are confident that they know everything have a really long learning curve. They usually get there, but it takes a little bit longer. Whereas we see founders, even founders who have built 2 or 3 startups beforehand, but understand that there's a universe of things that they may not know that they don't know. Those tend to be the ones that, one, learn more quickly, but also bring around them a team of folks who are passionate and want to support and are doing that sort of incredible teamwork. And I think that that's been, for me, a new, I don't know if it's new, but a really important mechanism to really see how the personality and the founder affect that. And I don't think that's in any way taking away from passion and drive. I absolutely think that founders need to be irrationally passionate and driven about their companies. If they were rationally driven about them, they wouldn't be doing it, because we all know what the numbers look like and we all know what the chances are. If you were looking at purely rationally, then find another job. But in addition to sort of the irrational passion, having a sense of sort of humility and ability to learn and desire to learn, I think is irreplaceable.
Amazing. And so, do you see any shift in the entrepreneurs over the last couple of years, as we're saying, the startup nation moved to scale up nation? Are things changing also in terms of the mentality of the entrepreneurs from your perspective?
So I think there's absolutely changes going on. The first has to do with sort of age and maturity. I think we are seeing founders who have gotten several years of work experience beforehand and are then going out on their journey, as opposed to perhaps I think our expectation was that most founders were really young, directly out of the army or directly out of the university, and we're going to go launch companies. We're seeing that actually grow a little bit. So we're having a slightly more mature startups or some more mature founders who are applying. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two is a real profound understanding that they're looking to build companies, not just startups that are going to grow to some sort of milestone and then perhaps look for an exit or for an acquisition. That's not to say that all startups are going there, but I think there's in the last 5 years, we've just seen so many more Israeli companies that have reached growth level in that scale. I mean, just in the last couple of months, seeing the number of Israeli companies that have gone public in the States is just, it's mind blowing. And it was not the standard even just 2-3 years ago. And I think that is an indication of the maturation of not only the local market, but also the local entrepreneurs. And that makes things, that makes the ultimate goal for so many of the founders look a little bit different.
100%. Yonit, toda rabba for coming here. This was
my pleasure.
Really, really lovely. I really appreciate it. I have a few more questions, not about MassChallenge,
okay,
but about yourself. And I want to take you back
Go for it.
all the way to your childhood. What fascinated you as a kid, whether it's a subject in school, a passion hobby of yours?
So when I was a kid, I had two dreams. I had two plans. They weren't dreams. I had plans. The first was to be an Olympic figure skater. And I very much believed that this was going to be my future. When I was 9 or 10 years old, my family moved back to the United States, and I saw the 1992 Olympics. And I remember as a kid waking up to watch Kristi Yamaguchi figure skate, and I said, "This is what I'm going to do." And my parents were totally not into it, and were like, "There's no way you're going to actually do that." Fast forward 10 years, I spent 10 years figure skating, competed as a figure skater. My first jobs were as a figure skating instructor. And, which I have to say, if you are in college and you need to find a job to do, this is ace. This was an awesome job to have while I was at Johns Hopkins. I would get up in the morning, roll out of bed, go over to the rink, work with a bunch of kids to help them learn how to skate, and then get to class. And it was awesome. That was a really great time. And now I get to try to do that with my own kids, which is not going quite as well as I would have hoped. But
wonderful. And a role model, some inspiration along your journey, professionally or personally, as you go through your path.
Well, I think I mentioned this when I talk about sort of going to the campaign, but I just think that there is, I had this incredible opportunity very early on in my career to work with people who were so much smarter, so much more driven, just knew so much more than I did. And I just think that a day that you go into the office and that you're blown away by the wisdom and tenacity of the people that you're working with is just a great day. So for me, that's been a sort of sense of role model, that you want to work with people who drive you, who push you to do better because they're just so outstanding. And it is one of the things that when I think about sort of what does my leadership look like, what does building or leading my team look like, I want to create an environment where my team get to be shining stars and driven and see that accomplishment every day. And hopefully I get to do that a little bit at MassChallenge as well.
Amazing. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
So I think of myself as being somebody who's all about balance, right? So on the one hand, very driven, and also like to sort of take my time and understand things. Trying to make an impact and change realities, but also recognizing that as a team we work much more significantly together rather than trying to really go it alone and make that impact and lead that flag. And I am ultimately about creating networks and bridges. I think as somebody who grew up in 2 different places in the U.S. and in Israel, I naturally am driven in that and sort of connecting around ecosystems or communities or countries. And I just think that that's really the way that we grow. This globe is more connected today than ever before, and that's the only direction we're going is to be more connected. And I think that the ability to think about networking and to think about parlaying experiences over different geographies is ultimately something that I'm passionate about, and also something that's going to drive growth for the future.
Yonit, toda.
More than 3 words, but thank you. Toda lecha.
I'll take it. This was amazing. Stay safe and stay healthy. And I can't wait to continue following MassChallenge as well. And the rest of the amazing things that you're going to do. Really inspiring. Thank you very much.
Right back at you. Thank you so much, Michael. Bye.
Thank you.